Welcome to Is This a Great Game or What? And our guest this week is Hall of Fame third baseman Chipper Jones, one of the greatest third basemen ever, one of the great switch hitters of all time, a world champion. Chipper, this is my son, Jeff. He has the same terrible voice that I do.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Jeff. Glad to be on with you guys, man. That was quite. You got to thank your dad for the introduction like that when he cut your knees out from under you right from the get-go.
Listen, I am just as self-deprecating as my father. I got his voice, and we're going to talk about your boys too. I'm sure they have your athletic ability. Thanks for Dad passing me the voice as opposed to a Chipper Jones quality athlete.
Well, Chipper, I gave him no height and a lot of body hair also, which is also not a great idea.
Man, the kid never had a chance.
Yeah.
Now, so Chipper, we had last year your longtime teammate, Jeff Francoeur, on the show. And at the end of the season, my dad and I, it was our very first year doing a podcast together, we put together our top 10 favorite moments of the show. And Frenchie earned the #1 spot.
Now, Chipper, have you heard the story where Bobby Cox, your beloved manager, told Frenchie to fake an injury in a spring training game so he could go play golf with Tiger Woods? You know that story, right?
It is very true. I know because I was, I believe, the fifth in that group. I was not going to miss being able to play golf with Tiger Woods and Annika Sorenstam in the same group that day. Now, I could just bow out anytime I wanted to from a spring training game, but young Mr. Frenchie, yeah, we had to have some kind of excuse. So I think he had a tight back or a little tweak in his hammy, but he was certainly out there hitting the golf ball around, having a good time with us.
Chipper, you know what he actually did? He ran through first base and then started to limp because that's what Bobby told him to do. And then his wife called him at 4:30 on the golf course and said, "It just crossed the wire. You have a high ankle sprain."
Day to day.
But that's just how cool Bobby was. Like, he knew that spring training is not only for getting yourself in shape, but you got to stay mentally sharp as well. And being on the golf course for those pitchers and sometimes those position players was that release that we needed. And he was so great. Most of the time, when we weren't playing games, we were out of there by 11 o'clock in the morning. Heck, we were teeing off by 11:30. But he trusted us to get ourselves ready come the end of March and the beginning of the season, April 1st.
Chipper, what was it like for you to play with Tiger and Annika Sorenstam? What was that day like?
It was the greatest golf day of my life. I think we played maybe 45 holes that day out at Reunion Golf Course, where Annika now has her school. So that was kind of the first introduction between Reunion and Annika for that great school that she has down there in Kissimmee, Florida. But yeah, I wasn't going to miss that. Being able to soak up as much knowledge as you could from, at that time, both #1 players in the world. I had a great time with Annika. We rode together, and she was like a sponge as well, like wanting to know what workout regimens were like, what the schedule and how grueling it was and whatnot. Tiger was, Tiger. He was cocky. Him and Smoltzy were going at it. I'll never forget the first 18. Tiger shot the most boring 66 that I've ever seen in my life. He hit every par 5 into and 2-putted for 4 birdies, and then we were on number 6, I think, on the Palmer course. Smoltzy's over there digging around in the bushes for his ball. Tiger has 91 yards into this par 4, and I walked behind him, and I said, I go, just make it. And he goes, 91 is my yardage, and he one-hop dunked it in the hole for an eagle.
No.
And it was Smoltzy's in the bushes, and he hears us, scream. And he like raises up, still looking for his ball, and he looks at me and he goes, "Did he make it?" I go, "He made it." And so, yeah, he got waxed by Tiger that day.
Right. Smoltzy, as far as his competitive nature goes, Chipper, you're all the same, all you big leaguers, but he's on another level when it comes to I have to win it, whatever it is. I'm
Yeah.
correct about that, right?
Yeah, the most competitive guy that I've ever played with. This is probably why he's, you know, I think if we had any of the big three that we were going to run out there when the lights were the brightest, it would probably be Smoltzy. He will not stop playing golf until he is actually up on you. He will play until well after dark. But it doesn't matter what it is, though. It could be cards, it could be backgammon, it could be tiddlywinks. It really does not matter with him. He will not stop. He's the Energizer Bunny on steroids.
And Francoeur also told us the story of the time he had Smoltzy beat. He was 5 up going into to 18 and lost by 5. Are you aware of that story too?
I was also there for that one. I mean, Frenchie was so jacked up. This was going to be the first time that he was ever going to beat him straight up. Yes, he had I believe a 2 or 3 shot lead going to 18, but 18 was a par 5, water all the way down the left side, and Frenchie made a 14 on 18 to lose by quite a few. And Tim, I can't tell you guys the amount. It was like we had just lost game 7 of the. He was so dejected. He was literally on the verge of tears that day. And Smoltzy and I were just horse laughing like crazy because Smoltzy on the tee box said, "Now, Frenchie, don't get nervous. This is a big deal for you. I know." And so he started psyching him out right there. And I mean, the first drive, I mean, it didn't come within hell's half acre of dry land. It was way gone. And then it started getting in his head, and he was toast after that.
And we were told by Smoltz that the next day when it got back to the clubhouse, that anytime that Francoeur talked to anybody, the answer to the question was 14 because that's what he. So it's like, how many pitches did this guy throw in his last appearance? 14. Like that was the whole team was in on it.
We have a sort of way of reminding teammates of very embarrassing, very, very, precarious moments where they don't want to be reminded of it. So that's what a Major League Clubhouse is all about.
Sure.
This podcast is called "Is This a Great Game or What?" And I think sometimes we have to remember that it's a baseball podcast because we talk just as much about golf because there's so many great stories, especially from you guys and those great Braves teams. Now, Chipper, I want to take it back a little bit. The Braves are hosting the All-Star game this year, which is awesome. But taking it back to your very first All-Star game, because our guest from a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you're familiar with fellow Hall of Famer Cal Ripken Jr., but we just had him on the show. And your rookie year, did he give you a gift? Do I have this right?
Yeah, see, Cal was my guy. Growing up, I had a couple of guys. I grew up a shortstop, so I used to love watching Cal and obviously Ozzie Smith, the Wizard, and Barry Larkin. And I tried to take a little bit from each of those guys, but Cal was my guy. I think I was 8 or 9 years old when he was Rookie of the Year, MVP. Orioles won a world championship right in that span as well. So to say that he was my guy was an understatement, but he threw out the first pitch, I believe, in game 1 of the World Series that year, in and around him breaking the record for consecutive games played. And everybody knew my love for Cal Ripken. So the meeting before the game was inevitable. And he signed one of his Cal Ripken number 8 logoed balls, that they'll do that for special occasions throughout the years. And it said, "You're off to a great start. Now the hard part starts." staying here. You know, it's something to that effect. And it really hung with me forever because you can get off to those good starts as rookies. And we've all seen the sophomore slumps and the confidence problems come once the league makes its adjustments to you. So that was a message to me from one of the all-time greats that, hey, just because you're off to a good start, the hard part is still in front of you, staying here and being elite for a long time. That's the hard part.
And Chipper, that ball still sits on your desk at home, does it not?
It's not on the desk. We've since moved since I think the last time I talked to you. It's downstairs in my basement. I've got a wonderful man cave down there with all my prized possessions, and that's where she lays.
So I gotta ask then, if you have your prized possessions, is there anything else in there, you know, that you're like, oh, if the house is going down, I gotta grab what? Like what's something else you're really proud of in addition to that ball?
Okay, so you guys know we go to these card shows all the time, and whenever we have some downtime, we maybe just walk around and see some of the cool memorabilia that's around at these card shows. And I've gotten so much cool stuff, you know, just meandering through. And all it really cost me is a picture with a guy or a couple of autographs here and there. I have a case that has 11 balls in it, and it's 11 of the first 13 500 home run hitters, and they're all in one case, and it's sitting right underneath my TV, front and center, down at my man cave. And I think, you know, more so than, you know, the two World Series rings, one as a player, one as a coach, an MVP trophy, I would probably go after that case because, I mean, there's some dudes in there. I think the only two that I'm missing is maybe Ruth and maybe Garrett or I can't remember. I haven't been down there in quite some time, but 11 of the first 13. So I
Wow.
mean, I know there's been a lot more since then, but those first original 13 were gospel, if you will.
Are you freaking out, Dad? That is
Yeah,
like such like I could see the chills on your body.
So, Chipper, to that end, you must have met Ted Williams along the way, right?
Never met Ted. How about this? So I win the 1999 NL MVP. Where was the All-Star game that year?
In
It was in
Boston.
Boston with all, you know, Fenway Park with everybody giving tribute to Ted Williams, and I did not make the
Gosh!
All-Star team in 1999. So unfortunately, and Boch and Bruce Bochy and I, we have a laugh about this every time we see each other because he actually called me before the All-Star game. That was the year that Jason Kendall rounded first and had that freak injury. He was obviously going to the All-Star game, and I probably would have made it. He probably would have picked me, but their next best player, and they had to have a representative, was Ed Sprague, who was a third baseman.
Right.
So I got, you know, kind of pushed out of the All-Star game there in 1999, and what a game it would have been to be a part of honoring Ted Williams with all the greats in our game at that point. It was one really that I missed. I
Yeah.
really did miss making that one.
Well, I didn't miss that one, and I did the post-game sidebar that from that game, Chipper, on the pre-game show where everyone got to meet Ted Williams. Tony Gwynn and Cal Ripken brought all the players over to meet Ted Williams, and they were absolutely in awe of who Ted Williams was. And sorry you missed that, but it was
Yeah.
only in baseball, Chipper, can you have that kind of reverence. The people I meet, the players who meet like Willie Mays or Hank Aaron for the first time, they're like speechless because
Yeah.
it's Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. You must have had an experience like that.
I did with a few people throughout my career. Going back to that Boston game, you could tell that Ted Williams was out there talking hitting with Tony Gwynn or King. I mean, that's all he could really talk about. He was the splendid splinter. Really missed that one. Fortunately, I did get to miss those first 6 strikeouts of the game by Pedro Martinez, which I
Would have been
probably certainly
you.
would have. I would have been one of them probably as well. But yeah, through the years, my dad was a huge Mickey Mantle fan, and I got a chance to do a card show sitting right next to him in 1992. I was in Double A with the Greenville Braves, that great Greenville Braves team that we had, and I just remember I holding this man in such high reverence because of the fact that that's all my dad could talk about. And whenever we went in the backyard and we simulated lineups, Mike Scioscia comes up, got to hit left-handed. That's just how we learn. So I find myself in the mirror the night before. Here I am. Let's see, 19. I was 20 years old. So I'm practicing how to meet Mickey Mantle. And I can just remember walking up and nothing came out. I was like a little schoolgirl, talking to him, but he was great. We had some laughs. He did have some libations hidden underneath the table, at 11 o'clock in the morning. So it was quite the introduction.
Right now, your dad, Larry, of course, is your hero and is your batting coach and everything else. But tell Jeff the story that you told me 30 years ago, how your dad took you out of your public school and moved you
Mhm.
90 miles up the road to the Bowl School. Tell us
Yeah.
why he did that. I'm fascinated by this story.
So I'm obviously from a little blue collar town, very small school. We didn't play very good competition. Um, I was making A's and B's and not bringing a book home, not really being challenged enough academically. And we had a ton of interaction with the Bowles School throughout the years because they were in our region. We had a pretty good baseball team, pretty good football team, and it always seemed like Bowles knocked us out of the playoffs. My dad, Coach Siriano at Jacksonville Bowles, got to become really good friends, and Coach Siriano joked throughout the years because I would be out there practicing with the varsity guys when I was in fifth, sixth grade. He go, man, that kid would look good in orange and blue. So that always kept that in the back of his mind. Once I got to ninth grade, it became apparent that I was going to either sign, with a big Division I school, or I was going to get drafted, and I needed a new challenge. And the hardest thing for two parents with one child is to make the decision to send them 2 hours north where there's no coming home during the week. I'm living in a dorm room from the time 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, managing my own time, doing all those things, maybe coming home on the weekends, but I'm going to Jacksonville. I'm going to play unbelievable competition at both the baseball and football, and I'm going to be challenged academically. Now, I struggled for the first little bit, but I really believe that move was to Jacksonville was probably one of the most important moves in my career because um, it challenged me. It challenged me to grow up really fast because at 18 I was definitely going to be on my own after signing, with the Atlanta Braves, and going to a boarding school really prepared me for all of those things. It was a hard move for them, but the right one.
Well, listen, Chipper, I mean, it speaks volumes. I'm a recent dad of almost 2-year-old, but I remember my dad always saying when I would play basketball or baseball, it's like, don't shy away from the best player on the court. Don't get
Heck
afraid
yeah.
of the best pitcher, because if you can hit him, that's way better for you than if you're hitting the guy who's just throwing, meatballs across the plate, right? It's so much better for
See,
your growth as a player. So you kind of credit that in those years at that school for really making you into Chipper Jones, right?
that's such a great mentality for parents to instill in kids. And to be honest with you, it wasn't my dad who instilled that in me. It was my mom. My
Mm.
mom, being a professional equestrian, she was unbelievable with what she did with the horses and whatnot. But she would always say, whenever I was going through a rough patch, she was like, I don't care who's on the mound. I don't care what name is on the back of that jersey. If he throws it over that plate, you're going to whack it. and that's just the mentality. She said, whenever you walk out on that field, you may not be the best player on the field, but up here you think you are. And you let that guy know when you're walking to the plate that, hey, buddy, you're in for a rough AB right here.
Chipper, I've ridden one horse in my life. It was a complete disaster. Trust me. Have you ridden a million horses in your life?
Oh no, 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 no. I learned my lesson quite a few times early on, probably before the age of 10. I can remember one time I had this pony. We called him Cruiser, and we had a 10-acre farm there, and I would take him up to the top of the hill on the back of the property, and I would put the spurs to that little pony, and pew, down that hill we go just as fast as we could. Well, one day, Cruiser got a belly bait full of having Chipper on his back. And when we got to the bottom of the hill, man, he slammed on the brakes. Saddle, Chipper, bridle, everything went right down his neck, face planted, right in my backyard. And oh, I was pissed. I was so pissed. So I come in, I'm stomping up the stairs, and I slam my door, and my parents are like, the heck's wrong with him? Well, they look out back. Cruiser's sitting out there grazing with the saddle down around his neck. And they go, now I see what happened. So that was kind of my my last experience with having something between my legs that I couldn't really control if I wanted to. You know what I mean?
Well, you talk about the bowl school, Chipper. Senior year, there's a pre-draft meeting at your house with the Braves to determine if you're going to be the number one overall pick. Tell us the story about that meeting, how you got to the meeting, and then how that meeting ended up.
Well, I was at prom. Uh, I was at prom with my girlfriend, and we didn't have cell phones back then. So it took a series of phone calls from my dad to my coach to friends to eventually get to me and say, you've got to get home right now. And they were right. I mean, this is probably the most important time of my life because, at that point, I was not by any means the best player in the draft, I don't think. Todd Van Poppel was the gem of the draft. But Todd Van Poppel didn't want to sign with the Atlanta Braves. And, myself, Tim Costo, shortstop out of Iowa, we were in the running for, top couple players. And I knew that the Tigers wanted Tony Clark. He was going number 2. I knew that Philadelphia wanted Mike Lieberthal. I knew that the White Sox wanted Alex Fernandez. So it was either Atlanta or then Pittsburgh, who had showed a lot of interest at 5, but I knew I wasn't going past 6 because George Zara from the Mariners, the longtime scout, was in love with me. And he told me, you're not going past 6. So I never really had any interaction with the Braves until about 2 nights before the draft. And that's when we had prom. Dad said, get your rear end home. We met with the Braves at an Olive Garden in Daytona Beach, Florida. And, it was a signability study. I mean, and I looked at them and I go, hey, if somebody else doesn't want to be your plan A, I'll be your plan B. You draft me, I'm signing. And we basically had a deal in place before they left that night. So it was pretty cut and dry. Um, but man, to think of the possibilities if Van Poppel signs with the Braves, I'm probably in that Pittsburgh, Seattle type of situation where I don't play 19 years in the same place. I'm probably going, from here to there all over the place to try and find a home, and it's not going to be Pittsburgh and Seattle.
Most important follow-up from that story: super salad at Olive Garden when you go unlimited.
Oh, salad.
Salad. You got
Salad
to go the salad, of course, with the
salad
unlimited
with the
breadsticks.
breadsticks.
Right.
Sure. So, Chipper, the story you told me was that you agreed to this contract with the Braves. Your dad said, Chipper, you can get way more than this. And you said, I'm sure I can, but I want to be the number one overall pick. I want to play right now. And most important, you told me this. You said, Dad, I'm going to make so much money in this game. I don't need to make it all in the first contract. That's the discussion you had with your father, correct?
It was, and it was more me not wanting to make waves, me not wanting to hold out, me wanting to be accepted by my new teammates and my new organization. There's no BS here. I think going out and asking for maybe a little more than what Ben McDonald got the year before, I don't think that's unreasonable. I ended up, I believe, signing for exactly the same thing as Ben McDonald did. Van Poppel kind of blew everything out of the water at 14 with the A's. I think he was over a million, but I wanted to go play. Okay. I wanted to, when I got the cast off my hand, I got in a fight 2 weeks before the draft and broke my hand. But when that cast came off, I wanted to be in camp with my guys, signed, sealed, and delivered, ready to play when that cast came off. And that's the way mom and dad made me.
Was it a baseball fight in which you broke your hand?
Yeah, it was the day before the state championship game, my senior year, which I was slated to pitch in. I still pitched even with the broken hand, but didn't have the stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just stuff that happens between 17, 18-year-old kids every day. We were down in Lakeland. We played our state championship games at Boardwalk and Baseball, where the Kansas City Royals used to train. We were uh, practicing at a local high school, and my coach comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, get your right-handed swings in. Take another round or two after everybody's done, left-handed, just to, show the scouts that you got this in your tool belt." And some of the guys, or one of the guys on the team, he was a backup catcher, junior, didn't really like the fact that he had to stay out there a little longer so that I could take some extra hacks, and he said something to me, and I popped him, and yeah, so he got 7 stitches, kind of in the temple, and yeah, I broke my hand. My coach comes up to me, he goes, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Nah, no, I think I broke my hand." So the defending state champs had a guy out there on the mound with a broken hand the next day, and we ended up losing 3-2 in the bottom of the last inning,
Wow.
which was kind of it was a heartbreaker, but it was a lesson for me early on in my career. Hey, maybe swallow hard and walk away, the next time, as opposed to popping some dude in the face.
And Chipper, we've talked a lot about the beginning of your career, the early years, but obviously Hall of Fame baseball career, you became the veteran in your clubhouse. And I've heard rumors of stories and things around you quite literally saving Freddie Freeman's life in a bizarre snow situation. Can you tell this story?
Snowmageddon.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I think
right.
that was, I want to say 2014, maybe.
Right.
Let me tell you something. I mean, people around here, I mean, it gets below 60, the turtlenecks come out. I mean, so they freak out whenever the weather turns bad. And obviously, we had a bad storm, black ice everywhere. And they let everybody out on this day. They let everybody out of school, out of work. The guys are down at the stadium, 45 minutes from where Freddie and I live. Freddie and I live maybe a quarter of a mile from each other. Chelsea and Taylor, my wife, are best buddies. So we spent a lot of time at each other's houses. And so Freddie, they sent everybody home from the stadium because they were like, the weather's turning really, really bad. And it took him 11 hours to get from Turner Field to just off the interstate where, that was our exit. and he had no battery left on his phone, and he was out of gas. And I was like, he's gonna freeze to death if he stays in his car. But I didn't want to drive either. The good thing about having a redneck for a friend is the fact that we have these ATVs, these four wheelers, that we can go through anything. So I told Taylor and Chelsea that I was going to get on my four wheeler, and man, I had all the hunting gear on, the scarves, the goggles from skiing and whatnot. And here I go, and it took me about 15 minutes to get to him and a couple of close calls with some vehicles along the way. But I could just remember I have to make an entrance when I get there. So, of course, he's in his truck, and I see his car, and I floor it, right? And right when I get to his car, I let off and slam on the brakes, and I just go around right in front of him. He gets out. He goes, "Yes, that was awesome." So then he gets on the back. I've got a backpack full of clothes for him because it's cold now. And so we take off from my house. And when we get to my house, we pull into my garage, and my wife snaps the infamous picture of me and Freddie on this four wheeler, and everybody compares that to the Dumb and Dumber, Lloyd Christmas. Hey, we're going up through, we're going to Aspen,
Yeah.
Uh,
That John Denver is full of what.
yes, and they actually made a bobblehead out of it, and it's probably one of the highest selling bobbleheads in Atlanta history.
That is so.
That
great.
is the best story. That might be the number one story of this year's podcast. Frenchie got it last year. I think Chipper's going to get it this year.
That's amazing. And you helped Freddie in so many ways. So Mark Teixeira, your teammate briefly in Atlanta, told me that you are the smartest hitter he has ever played with. But he told me every night before the game started, on the way to the dugout, like right before the game started, you would always stop and jump on the computer and play some sort of game on the computer, solitaire, something like that. And he said Chipper could do that because he already knew what was going to happen in the game. He didn't have to run through the scouting report. What does this guy throw? What was your mindset on stopping at a computer right before the game starts?
It relaxed me. It focused me. Yes, sometimes it was solitaire. Sometimes it was a USA Today crossword, something like that. I like to exercise the mind, even to this day. I love doing the USA Today crosswords. I love playing solitaire. Heck, I'll play Candy Crush. Anything
Right.
that's got this kind of you got to really exercise your brain for. I'm all in on, and I think it helped me focus. I didn't want to do it with anybody else because I didn't want conversation. I wanted to be alone with my thoughts, and get centered because if I was doing that then, I had already done my research on the pitcher that I was facing that night. Every night I watched whoever the starter was. I watched right when I got there at 1 o'clock. I would watch his last three starts. I wanted to know where his head was at. I wanted to know if he was 3-0 with a 1 ERA, or 0-3 with a 6 ERA, or 0-0 with a 3.5 or 4. I want to know where his head was at. Also, I'm watching how he's pitching guys in the middle of the lineup, base open, bases empty. All these things go into my thought process and my game plan each and every night. So I've already done my homework before most of the guys even get there. So I'm mentally prepared already. That little 30 minutes before I walk down that long tunnel at Turner Field really got me centered, got me focused, and you know, uh, got me ready for 7:05. It was just one of my little quirky things that I did, throughout the years.
It's so amazing hearing different preparations from different players. And I think the one common thread we always see, Dad, is what's on the field is just as important as what's off the field. If it relaxes you and gets you in a state of mind, then that's what's great. And, we're seeing, I think, a once in a generation player in Ronald Acuña Jr. right now for the Braves. Tell us, Chipper, from your perspective as a Hall of Fame player, and what a great career you had and working with the Braves now. What do you see in this guy? Is he as great as we all think he is? Because he's incredible.
I catch a lot of flack for saying this. I've often said he is the most talented player that has ever put a Braves uniform on. Now, everybody kind of links that with being the best player that ever played in this organization. I'm not saying that. You know, we all know who the greatest player who ever played in this organization is, and that's Hank Aaron. There have been some really good ones throughout the years, but when I say talent, I mean this kid has stuff in his tool belt that nobody else has. You know, everybody says, well, Hank Aaron could have stole a bunch of bases. Yeah, but he didn't steal 70. You know,
Right.
Hank Aaron hit 40 homers. Yeah, but Ronald hit 40 and stole 70 in the same year. This kid's got all kinds of talent in right field. He's a great defensive right fielder. He's got a howitzer on his right arm. He can fly. He works. A lot of people, he gets kind of a bad rap here and there. Look, I've been down there with him, day after day after day. This kid works and he cares about going out and dominating, and I just feel like, man, the sky is the limit. You saw it with the 40-70. It's unfortunate. Much like myself, he's had 2 ACL injuries, which has kind of knocked him back a peg. We'll see in the coming years how that affects him. I did both of my ACLs on the same knee. He's done it on each knee. So, it's going to be interesting to see once he hits, the early 30s, how maybe possibly that comes back to bite him a little bit. But let me tell you something. People always say there's a different sound when the ball comes off the bat. So much so to me that I called my dad and I was like, Pops, I just want you to come up to Atlanta just to watch this kid hit in batting practice. It is one of the most impressive things. He's not very big. He's 6'1", 95 pounds. I mean, he's built, but he's not a giant human by any stretch of the imagination. But when that ball comes off his bat, it is different. And I just think if we can get him to have a sustained period of good health through his peak years, he's going to show you guys something.
All right, Chipper, before we let you go, we had Tom Glavine on earlier in the podcast this year. We had Smolty on last year, and they both talked about Greg Maddux. Now, please confirm this story for Jeffrey. I hope I got it right. Bobby Cox comes to take Maddox out of a playoff game, and Maddox says, Bobby, you can't take me out. I got this guy. You can take me out after this guy, but I got this guy. He's going to foul out to Chipper on the first pitch. And on the first pitch, the guy pops out to you, and you're in fair territory by about 6 inches. Yeah. And everyone says to Maddox, you got it wrong. Chipper was in fair territory. Is that a story that actually happened? And does it kind of personify the brilliance of Greg Maddux?
It 100% happened. It 100% shows you that he is the master. There were some subtle differences in the story. Bobby sent Leo out to walk Luis Gonzalez. Luis hit Maddox pretty good. I think he's got the most career homers off of Maddox, probably, hit him at a 300 clip. And we had a base open, and Bobby wanted to walk Luis, so he sends Leo out. So I go out there, and Leo looks at Doggy with this kind of sheepish look on his face, and he goes, Bobby wants you to walk Louis. And Greg was like, no, I'm not walking him. He goes, I'm gonna throw him a changeup away for a ball, and then I'm gonna throw him a cutter in, and he's gonna hit a pop-up to Chipper, and we're gonna get out of this thing. And Leo just kind of looks at me and he goes, okay. And he turns and he walks back, right? Well, Leo gets to the dugout and he tells Bobby that, Doggy was like, no, he's not walking him. He tells him, change up away, cutter in. He's going to hit a pop up to Chipper. And so he throws a change up away for a ball, and he throws a cutter in, and it goes up. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I mean, but he knew, and he studies hitters. Like, he and I have had so many conversations through the years about what I'm looking for in certain situations. And I know that he's using some of that in those confrontations with some of those middle of the lineup type hitters whenever the rubber is meeting the road and he has to make a pitch, what he's going to get that guy out with. And that was just one that he called. Maybe he got lucky on the result, but I tell you what, it was awfully fun to be a part of that. And Bobby, I could hear Bobby cussing all the way from the first base dugout to third base when Leo told him no, that he wasn't going to walk him. And Bobby was laughing hysterically when we got back to the dugout after the end.
Chipper Jones, you have made us laugh. You were it's just incredible time getting to chat with you. I still look back at those Braves teams. I was born in 93, Chipper. So for me, that, like, you know, so much of your upbringing was Cal Ripken Jr. A lot of my upbringing was watching you and those Braves teams. And I would be remiss if I didn't say my grandfather, my daddy Pat, my mom's dad, never misses a Braves game, especially during your years. And to see all of those guys now celebrating in the Hall of Fame. And my final question for you is, we brought up Freddie Freeman, who I believe should be a first ballot Hall of Famer at this point of his career. How cool will that be, especially with how close your wives are and how close you two are, that moment he makes it into the Hall?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt he's on Hall of Fame trajectory. I'd like to throw in another plug for Andrew Jones, hopefully get an opportunity here in the next year or two to kind of extend that Braves wing that we have there in Cooperstown.
Right.
But yeah, Freddie's, it'll be like my younger brother is going in. You know, there's certain players that you take under your wing during the course of your career, and he and I just had a special bond. I knew that when I passed the torch to him, being that middle of the lineup, everyday threat in the Braves lineup, that he was going to take that torch and run with it. He certainly did for, you know, quite a few years after that. I'm extremely sad that he's not still here, but he's going out, had an iconic moment in the World Series, which I couldn't be prouder for him about. I texted him right after the game and said, decent. You know, just one word. I said, decent. I got to let him know I'm hard to please, man, you know, so I'll throw him some flowers every once in a while, but let him know that I'm still better than him. But hopefully he's another one in the long line of Braves that joins us.
Chipper, that's the biggest grand slam in the history of baseball. It has to be a walk-off, the only walk-off grand slam in the history of the World Series, and it completely turned the World Series around because it happened in Game 1, and none of this would happen if you hadn't have saved his life in the ice and snow that day.
Okay, I'll take some credit for that.
He'd still be on the highway right now. Would have never made it to the Dodgers.
Chipper, thank you so much for making us laugh. Thank you for teaching us so much about the game. This is why we love having you on. I will see you at Cooperstown. I will see you soon.
Sounds good, guys. Pleasure being with you.